billionaire stands at his wife's grave, utterly alone in his grief. But on this day, something unexpected happens. He hears the sound of someone else crying at Eleanor's tomb. When he discovers who this girl is and why she's weeping, it shatters everything he thought he knew about the woman he married. What unfolds next is a story of hidden secrets, unexpected family connections, and a love so powerful that it transforms a broken man into someone willing to give away his entire fortune. This is the story of how one moment at a grave changed everything, and why what this billionaire did next broke everyone's heart. Imagine having everything the world says you should want. Billions in the bank. A tech empire that changed how millions of people communicate. Properties across the globe. Power, influence, recognition. The kind of success that makes ordinary people stop and stare. Now imagine having absolutely none of it matter. That was Maxwell Harrington's life. At 62 years old, Maxwell had built an empire that would make most people's wildest dreams look small. He'd started with nothing, a garage, a laptop, and an obsession with technology that bordered on madness. 40 years later, he'd amassed a fortune that most people couldn't even comprehend. $12 billion. 12 billion. But here's the thing about having everything. When you lose the one thing that actually mattered, all of it becomes worthless. That one thing was Eleanor. Eleanor Harrington wasn't just his wife. She was the light that made all the darkness bearable. She was the reason he'd built anything in the first place. Not for the money, not for the power, but because she believed in him when he was just a broke kid with big dreams. She stood by him through the early years when they lived in a cramped apartment and ate ramen noodles for dinner. She celebrated every victory and held him through every failure. And then, 5 years ago, cancer took her. Not quickly, not mercifully, but slowly, painfully, devastatingly. Maxwell watched the strongest woman he'd ever known fade away, day by day. He'd offered to buy the best doctors, the best treatments, the best everything money could offer. But there was one thing his $12 billion couldn't buy. More time with her. When she died, something inside Maxwell died too. The empire kept running. His team was too good, too invested, too skilled for it to fall apart. But Maxwell became a ghost, haunting his own life. He'd wake up in his massive penthouse overlooking the city, and for a split second, he'd forget she was gone. Then reality would crash down, and he'd spend another day going through the motions. Business meetings where he'd sit in silence while executives pitched ideas he didn't care about. Charity galas where he'd smile for photographers while feeling absolutely nothing inside. Board meetings where he'd make decisions that affected millions of lives, but couldn't make a single decision about his own. His days had become a hollow routine. Wake up, shower, stare at Eleanor's photograph on the nightstand, go to the office, come home, stare at her photograph again, sleep, repeat. The mansion, the one Eleanor had decorated with such love and care, had become a mausoleum. Every room held a memory. The kitchen where they'd cooked together on Sunday mornings, the library where they'd read in comfortable silence, the bedroom where he still kept her pillow exactly as she'd left it, sometimes pressing his face into it just to remember what her perfume smelled like. His friends had tried to help at first. They'd invited him to dinners, to events, to vacations. But Maxwell couldn't fake it anymore. He couldn't pretend to care about their problems when his own world had collapsed. Slowly, they'd stopped calling, and Maxwell had stopped answering. His children, 2 from his first marriage, had their own lives, their own families. They'd call on holidays and birthdays, but there was a distance there now. a chasm that had opened when their father had chosen to disappear into his grief instead of being present for them. So here he was, a man with everything and nothing. Billions in the bank, but not a single person to share dinner with. A global empire, but no one who truly needed him. Power and influence, but no purpose. 5 years of this. 5 years of existing, but not living. And then came the day that would change everything. It was a Tuesday morning in late September, the anniversary of Eleanor's death. Maxwell had kept this day sacred. No meetings, no calls, no distractions. Just him and his grief, like every year. He drove to Evergreen Cemetery alone, as he always did. The autumn sun was breaking through the clouds, casting long shadows across the manicured lawns. He parked his car and walked the familiar path to Eleanor's grave, his feet knowing the way by heart. The headstone was simple, just the way Eleanor would have wanted it. Her name, her dates, and the inscription he'd chosen. She saw everyone. Maxwell knelt down in front of the grave, placing fresh flowers, white roses, Eleanor's favorite, against the stone. He sat there for a long time, not saying anything, just being present with a woman who wasn't there. Years of grief had taught him that talking to a grave didn't bring anyone back, but it helped him feel less alone. "I miss you," he finally whispered, his voice rough from disuse. "Every single day, I miss you." The wind rustled through the trees. A bird sang somewhere in the distance. The world continued on, indifferent to his pain. Maxwell closed his eyes, letting the sun warm his face. Maybe today, like every other day, he'd sit here for an hour, then go home, and continue existing in the shell of his life. But then he heard it, a sound that cut through the quiet cemetery like a knife. Crying, not gentle, polite crying, but deep, wrenching sobs. The kind of crying that comes from a place of absolute desperation and heartbreak. Maxwell's eyes snapped open. He wasn't alone anymore. Just a few graves away, partially hidden by a large oak tree, was a girl. She couldn't have been more than 17 or 18. Thin, fragile-looking, with dark hair that fell in tangled waves down her back. She was on her knees in front of a grave, her entire body shaking with the force of her sobs. Maxwell watched her, confused. He'd been coming to this cemetery for 5 years. He'd never seen this girl before. And she was crying at Eleanor's grave. What Maxwell didn't know was that this moment, this single encounter with a stranger at his wife's tomb, would unravel a secret so profound that it would rewrite everything he thought he knew about Eleanor, about family, and about what it truly means to love someone. Maxwell's first instinct was to leave. This was his sacred space, his private moment with Eleanor. The last thing he wanted was to share it with a stranger. But he couldn't move. Something about the way this girl was crying, the raw, unfiltered anguish of it, kept him rooted to the spot. This wasn't casual sadness. This wasn't a polite tear shed for someone she'd known casually. This was the kind of grief that only comes when you've lost someone who truly mattered. Maxwell stood up slowly, his knees creaking from kneeling on the hard ground. He approached the girl carefully, not wanting to startle her, but needing answers. "Excuse me," he said quietly. I'm sorry to interrupt, but..." The girl's head snapped up so fast, it was like she'd been struck. Her eyes were red and swollen, her face streaked with tears and dirt. For a moment, pure panic flashed across her features, the look of someone caught doing something they shouldn't be doing. "I'm sorry," she gasped, scrambling to her feet. "I didn't know anyone was here. I'll go. I'm sorry." She started to back away, but Maxwell held up his hand. "Wait," he said. Please, I need to know why you're here, at this grave. The girl froze. Her entire body went rigid, like a deer caught in headlights, deciding whether to run or stand and fight. It's none of your business, she said finally, her voice defensive, her chin jutting out stubbornly. But her hands were shaking. Maxwell studied her for a long moment. There was something in her eyes, a defiance mixed with desperation, a toughness that couldn't quite hide the vulnerability underneath. This was someone who'd learned to protect herself, who'd built walls so high that letting anyone in felt dangerous. Eleanor Harrington was my wife, Maxwell said quietly. The girl's face went completely white. What? She whispered. This is her grave, Maxwell continued, and I've never seen you here before. So I'm asking again, why are you crying at my wife's grave? For a moment, the girl looked like she might bolt. Her eyes darted toward the cemetery path, calculating the distance, weighing her options. But then something shifted in her expression. Her shoulders sagged. The fight drained out of her. She helped me, the girl said softly. Eleanor. She was the only person who ever... Her voice broke and fresh tears spilled down her cheeks. Maxwell felt something crack open in his chest. He hadn't heard Eleanor's name spoken with such tenderness, such gratitude, in 5 years. His children spoke it with sadness. His friends spoke it with sympathy. But this girl, this stranger, spoke Eleanor's name like she was talking about a saint. Come, Maxwell said, gesturing to a nearby bench. Sit with me. Tell me about her. The girl hesitated, but then she followed him to the bench. They sat in silence for a moment, both of them staring at Eleanor's grave. My name is Lily, the girl said finally. I'm 17, and Eleanor, she saved my life. Those 7 words hit Maxwell like a physical blow. What do you mean she saved your life? He asked carefully. Lily took a shaky breath. I've been homeless for 3 years. Since I was 14. My parents, they weren't good people. My mom was an addict. My dad disappeared when I was a baby. I went into foster care, but the system is broken. I aged out at 18. Well, I will in a few months. I've been living on the streets since then. Maxwell felt his stomach turn. He tried to imagine this fragile girl surviving on the streets, and the image made him feel sick. 2 years ago, Lily continued, I was at a shelter downtown. I was sick, really sick, and I didn't think I was going to make it. I remember thinking that maybe it would be better if I didn't, that nobody would care anyway. She paused, wiping her eyes with the back of her hand. Eleanor came to the shelter that day. She was volunteering, helping serve meals. But she saw me. Not just looked at me, really saw me. Most people look through you when you're homeless, like you're invisible. But Eleanor, she stopped and talked to me. She asked my name. She asked about my life. She listened. Maxwell's heart was pounding. His wife had been volunteering at homeless shelters. He had no idea. No idea at all. What happened next? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. She came back, Lily said. Every week she'd come to the shelter and she'd find me. She'd bring me things, warm clothes, books, food. But more than that, she'd talk to me. She'd tell me about her life, about her dreams. She made me feel like I mattered, like my life had value. Tears were streaming down Maxwell's face now, but he didn't try to hide them. She helped me get into school, Lily continued. She paid for my GED classes. She helped me get a job at a local coffee shop. She told me I was smart, that I had potential, that I could do anything if I just believed in myself. Maxwell felt like the ground was shifting beneath him. His wife, the woman he'd been married to for 37 years, had been living a secret life he knew nothing about. "Lily," he said carefully, "did Eleanor ever tell you? Did she ever mention anything about her personal life? About her family?" Lily shook her head. "She didn't talk much about herself. I asked her once why she cared so much, why she spent so much time helping me when she could be doing anything else. And she just said..." Lily's voice grew quieter, more tender. "She said that sometimes you meet someone and you just know you're supposed to help them. That it's not a choice, it's a calling. She said that I reminded her of someone she used to know. Someone she lost a long time ago." Maxwell felt something break inside him. A piece of the puzzle clicking into place, but not in a way that made sense yet. "When did you last see Eleanor?" he asked. Lily's face crumpled. "About 6 months before she died. She came to the shelter like always. But she seemed different, tired. She told me she was going through some medical stuff, but that she was going to be okay. She said she had big plans for me, big plans for other kids like me. She said she was going to change things." "Did she say what kind of plans?" Maxwell pressed. "No," Lily said, "but she seemed really excited about it, like she'd finally figured out what she was supposed to do with her life. She told me to keep working hard, to stay focused, because she had something special planned for me. And then..." Lily's voice broke again. "And then she stopped coming. For weeks she didn't come to the shelter. I didn't know what happened. I thought maybe she'd gotten tired of helping me, or maybe she'd moved on to help someone else. And then one day the shelter director told me that Eleanor had passed away, that she died of cancer." Lily looked at Maxwell with devastated eyes. "I came here today because I needed to tell her. I needed to tell her that I made it, that I'm still here, that I'm going to do something with my life, just like she believed I would. I wanted to thank her for seeing me when nobody else did." Maxwell couldn't speak. He couldn't move. His entire understanding of his wife, of their marriage, of the life they'd shared, it was all fragmenting, reorganizing itself into a new shape that he didn't understand yet. "What's your name?" Lily asked suddenly. "You said Eleanor was your wife, but you didn't tell me your name." "Maxwell," he said quietly. "Maxwell Harrington." Lily's eyes widened in recognition. "Wait, Maxwell Harrington? Like the tech billionaire? Eleanor's husband was you?" "Yes," Maxwell said. "I was." Lily looked down at her hands. "She never told me she was married to someone famous. She never talked about her personal life much. But now that I think about it, that makes sense. She was so humble, so focused on helping others. She didn't seem like the type to be married to someone rich and powerful." Maxwell felt the weight of those words, like a physical force pressing down on his chest. His wife hadn't told this girl about him, hadn't mentioned her marriage, her husband, her life of wealth and privilege. Why? Why would Eleanor keep that part of herself hidden? "Lily," he said slowly, "I need to ask you something, and I need you to be completely honest with me. Did Eleanor ever give you money? Help you financially beyond the classes and the job assistance?" Lily hesitated. She paid for my GED classes, and sometimes she'd give me money for food or clothes. But I never asked her for it. She knew I needed it, and she'd help." Maxwell's mind was racing. Eleanor had access to her own accounts, her own money. Money he'd never questioned her spending. He'd been so absorbed in his business, so disconnected from their actual life together, that he'd never paid attention to what she was doing with her time or her resources. I should go, Lily said suddenly, standing up. I didn't mean to intrude on your time here. I'm sorry. I needed to come today. Wait, Maxwell said urgently. Please, don't go. I have so many questions. I need to understand. I need to know more about Eleanor, about what she was doing, about why she was helping you. Lily looked conflicted. I don't know if I should. You're a stranger. You could be anyone. And Eleanor wouldn't want me to. Please, Maxwell interrupted, and there was such raw desperation in his voice that Lily stopped. What do you want to know? She asked quietly. Everything, Maxwell said. I want to know everything about my wife that I apparently never knew. But as Lily began to share more details about Eleanor's secret life, Maxwell realized that the woman he'd been married to for nearly 4 decades was someone he'd never truly known at all. And the bigger problem wasn't lost customers or failed business deals. It was that Eleanor had taken her secrets to the grave. And now Maxwell had to figure out why she'd kept such a massive part of her life hidden from him. Maxwell didn't let Lily leave the cemetery that day. Instead, he drove her to a small cafe near the cemetery gates, ordered her hot chocolate and a sandwich, which she devoured like she hadn't eaten in days, and listened as she told him everything she knew about Eleanor. But it wasn't enough. Over the next week, Maxwell became obsessed. He couldn't eat, couldn't sleep, couldn't focus on anything except uncovering the truth about his wife's secret life. He had resources that most people could only dream of, and he used every single one of them. He hired private investigators to track Eleanor's movements over the past 5 years. He reviewed bank statements going back a decade. He called the homeless shelter and spoke to the director, who confirmed everything Lily had told him and added more details about Eleanor's volunteer work. What he discovered shattered him. Eleanor had been withdrawing money from her personal accounts, significant amounts, for years. Thousands of dollars a month that she'd never mentioned to him. He found receipts for donations to various charities, payments to shelters, tuition assistance for students. But the amounts were staggering. Over 5 years, she'd given away nearly $2 million. $2 million that Maxwell hadn't known about. He felt sick. How had he not noticed? How had they lived in the same house, slept in the same bed, shared meals together? And he'd known absolutely nothing about this massive part of her life. The answer was simple and devastating. He hadn't been paying attention. Maxwell had been so consumed with building his empire, so focused on expanding his business, so obsessed with making more money, that he'd stopped seeing the woman he'd married. He'd stopped asking questions about her day. He'd stopped listening when she talked. He'd become a ghost in his own marriage, present in body, but absent in every way that mattered. And Eleanor had responded by building a life he knew nothing about. Then came the discovery that changed everything. Maxwell's investigator called him late one evening. "Sir, I think you need to come to the office. We found something in Eleanor's financial records that you need to see in person." 20 minutes later, Maxwell was staring at a folder filled with documents that made his blood run cold. Eleanor hadn't just been donating money to charities. She'd been systematically planning something massive. The documents showed legal paperwork, foundation bylaws, investment portfolios, and detailed plans for what appeared to be a comprehensive charitable organization, the Eleanor Harrington Foundation for At-Risk Youth. There were pages and pages of detailed plans. Youth centers in 12 major cities, scholarship programs, job training initiatives, mental health services, housing assistance. Everything was laid out with meticulous precision. Budgets, timelines, staffing requirements, projected outcomes. And at the bottom of the final document, in Eleanor's handwriting, were words that made Maxwell's heart stop. "To be implemented upon my death," All funds to be transferred from personal accounts. Total commitment, $500 million. $500 million. Eleanor had been planning to give away $500 million to help homeless youth, and she'd never told him. Maxwell sat in his office in complete shock, holding the documents with shaking hands. His wife, the woman he'd loved for 37 years, had been planning the largest philanthropic initiative of her life, and he'd known nothing about it. He went home that night and did something he hadn't done in 5 years. He went through Eleanor's things, not in a frantic, desperate way, but methodically, carefully, trying to piece together the woman his wife had been when he wasn't looking. In the back of her closet, behind a loose panel, he found a journal. Maxwell sat on the bedroom floor, the same floor where Eleanor had taken her last breath, and he read his wife's words. Pages and pages of her innermost thoughts, her hopes, her dreams, and her pain. The journal entries went back years, and as Maxwell read, a picture emerged that broke his heart into 1,000 pieces. Eleanor had been searching for someone she'd lost a long time ago, a sister. The entries were fragmented, emotional, sometimes barely coherent. Eleanor wrote about growing up in foster care, about being separated from her sister when they were children, about spending decades trying to find her. "I found her," one entry read, dated 15 years ago. "My sister, she's alive. She's in the city. I found her." But then the entries became darker, more painful. "She doesn't want to know me. She's built a life without me. I tried to approach her, but she was angry. She said I abandoned her. I tried to explain that I didn't have a choice, that I was just a kid. But she wouldn't listen. She told me to leave her alone." Maxwell felt tears streaming down his face. Eleanor had a sister she'd been searching for. Why had she never told him? He kept reading. "I can't let her go. Not again. I won't lose her twice. I'm going to find another way to be part of her life, even if she doesn't know it's me." And then, dated 7 years ago, "I found her daughter. My niece. She's beautiful and broken, and so much like me it hurts. She's living on the streets, and it's killing me. I'm going to help her. I'm going to save her. I'm going to do what I couldn't do for her mother. I'm going to be there for her in every way I can, even if she never knows we're family." Maxwell's hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold the journal. "Lily," he whispered. "Eleanor's niece is Lily." He kept reading, finding entry after entry about Lily. Eleanor's hopes for her future, her dreams of helping her get an education, get a job, build a life. And interspersed throughout were entries about Maxwell. "I want to tell him. I want to tell Maxwell everything. But I'm afraid. Afraid that he'll judge me for my past. Afraid that he won't understand. Afraid that if I tell him about my sister, about my niece, it will change everything between us. So I keep it secret. I volunteer at the shelter. I help Lily. I build my foundation plans, all in secret, all in the dark." And then, dated just months before Eleanor's diagnosis, "The doctors say I have cancer. I don't know how long I have, and all I can think is that I've wasted so much time. I've wasted years keeping secrets from Maxwell, from Lily, from everyone. I've been so afraid of being judged that I've cut myself off from the people I love. If I survive this, I'm going to change everything. I'm going to tell Maxwell the truth. I'm going to tell Lily that I'm her aunt. I'm going to stop hiding and start living. But if I don't survive..." The entry trailed off, unfinished. Maxwell closed the journal and wept. His wife had been dying, and she'd been planning to tell him everything. She'd been planning to change their entire life, to introduce him to the niece he never knew he had, to launch a massive foundation dedicated to helping the very people who'd raised his wife in foster care. But cancer had stolen that opportunity. Eleanor had died before she could tell him, before she could sign the legal documents, before she could transform their world. And now Maxwell was left holding the pieces of a life his wife had been building without him, desperately trying to understand why she'd felt she had to keep it all secret. Over the next few days, Maxwell did something he'd never done before. He went through Eleanor's email. He found correspondence with lawyers, with foundation planners, with shelter directors. He found drafts of letters Eleanor had written to Lily, letters she'd never sent, letters that were filled with love and longing and the desperate desire to tell her the truth. "My dear Lily," one draft read, "I need to tell you something that will change everything. You are not alone in this world. You have family. You have me. I am your aunt, and I have loved you since the moment I found you." The letter was never finished. Maxwell realized that Eleanor had been trying to tell Lily the truth. She'd been planning to do it, but her illness had progressed faster than expected. By the time she'd understood the gravity of her condition, she'd been too weak to do anything but fight for her life. And then she'd died without ever telling Lily the truth, without ever telling Maxwell, without ever launching the foundation that was supposed to be her legacy. Maxwell sat in his office late one night, surrounded by Eleanor's documents, her journals, her dreams, and he made a decision. He was going to finish what Eleanor had started. He was going to tell Lily the truth about her connection to Eleanor. He was going to launch the Eleanor Harrington Foundation. He was going to give away $500 million to help homeless youth, just like his wife had wanted. And he was going to do it all in Eleanor's name, as a monument to the woman he'd failed to truly know while she was alive. It was the least he could do. But first, he had to tell Lily. And he had no idea how she would react to learning that the woman who'd saved her life was actually her aunt. Maxwell rehearsed the words 100 times in his head, trying to find the right way to tell Lily that Eleanor wasn't just a volunteer who'd helped her. Eleanor was family. But no matter how he practiced it, the truth remained the same. Eleanor had found her niece living on the streets and had spent years helping her in secret, planning to reveal the truth but never getting the chance. And now Maxwell had to be the one to tell Lily that she'd had family all along, that she'd never been as alone as she thought, and that Eleanor's love for her had been deeper and more profound than she could ever have imagined. Maxwell called Lily 3 days later. It was a Tuesday morning, and he'd spent the entire night rehearsing what he was going to say. He'd written it down, crossed it out, rewritten it. No matter how many times he practiced, the words never felt quite right. How do you tell someone that their entire understanding of their life has been a lie? How do you explain that the person who saved you was actually your family? "I need to see you," he said without preamble when Lily picked up the phone. "There's something I need to tell you. Something about Eleanor." Lily's voice was cautious over the phone, tinged with wariness. "Okay, but I don't know if I have anything else to tell you. I've already told you everything I know about Eleanor. Everything she ever said to me, every conversation we had." "It's not about what you know," Maxwell said carefully, choosing his words with deliberate precision. "It's about what Eleanor knew. About you. About who you really are. Please, Lily, will you meet me? This is important. More important than anything I've ever needed to tell someone." There was a long pause on the other end of the line. Maxwell could hear the sound of traffic in the background. Lily must have been outside somewhere, probably at work or heading to one of her classes. Where? Lily finally asked, her voice uncertain. The same cafe, Maxwell said. The one where we talked last time, tomorrow at 2 o'clock. And Lily, please come. I'm asking you as someone who cares about you. This is important. He heard her exhale slowly, a sound of resignation mixed with curiosity. Okay, I'll be there. But Maxwell, you're scaring me a little bit. What's this about? Just come, Maxwell said gently. I promise it will make sense when you hear it. He hung up the phone and sat in the darkness of his study, surrounded by Eleanor's documents, her journals, her photographs. He looked at the picture of Eleanor on his desk. Taken on their 30th anniversary, her smile radiant and genuine, her eyes full of light. How many secrets had she been keeping behind that smile? How much of her inner world had she hidden from him? Maxwell spent the entire next morning preparing, moving through his penthouse like a man in a trance. He printed out copies of Eleanor's most important journal entries, the ones that explained everything about Lily, about Eleanor's search for her sister, about the depth of Eleanor's love for this girl she'd only recently found. He gathered photographs from Eleanor's private files, pictures that Maxwell had never seen before. Candid shots of Lily at the shelter, Lily laughing, Lily crying, Lily looking vulnerable and strong all at once. In every photograph, he could see the love in Eleanor's eyes, the tenderness with which she'd captured these moments. These weren't just photographs. They were a record of Eleanor's heart, a visual diary of her relationship with her niece. He found the handwritten letter that Eleanor had drafted but never sent, the one in which she'd planned to tell Lily the truth about their connection. The letter was filled with Eleanor's careful handwriting, each word chosen with care, each sentence a testament to the emotional weight of what she was trying to communicate. He also gathered documents related to the Eleanor Harrington Foundation, the legal paperwork, the foundation bylaws, the investment portfolios, the detailed plans for youth centers in 12 major cities. These documents represented Eleanor's dreams, her vision for how to transform the lives of homeless youth. Maxwell placed all of these items carefully into a leather folder, the same folder that Eleanor had used to organize her most important documents. He wanted everything to feel connected, to feel like a continuation of Eleanor's work rather than a new beginning. He sat in his study for hours, going over the documents, reading Eleanor's words again and again. Each time he read them, he discovered something new. A detail he'd missed, a nuance in Eleanor's language that revealed something deeper about her emotional state, her hopes, her fears. By the time he left for the cafe the next day, Maxwell felt like he'd been through an emotional ringer. His eyes were red from crying, his hands trembled slightly. His heart felt like it was beating too fast, too hard, as if it might burst out of his chest at any moment. He arrived at the cafe at 1:30 p.m., 30 minutes early. He ordered a coffee that he didn't drink and sat at a corner table, the folders spread out in front of him. He watched the other customers come and go, envying their normalcy, their apparent freedom from the kind of crushing emotional weight that he was carrying. A young couple sat at the table next to him, holding hands and laughing about something. Maxwell watched them and felt a sharp pain in his chest. He and Eleanor had been like that once, a lifetime ago. They'd been young and in love and full of dreams. When had they stopped being that couple? When had they become strangers living in the same house? Lily arrived at 2:03 p.m., slightly out of breath, her dark hair pulled back in a messy bun. She was wearing a barista uniform. Maxwell realized she must have come straight from work. She looked younger than she had at the cemetery, more vulnerable, more fragile. He could see the exhaustion in her face, the weight of survival etched into her features. She ordered a coffee at the counter and then made her way over to Maxwell's table, moving slowly, cautiously, like someone approaching an uncertain situation. "Hi," she said, sitting down across from him. "You look like you haven't slept." "I haven't," Maxwell admitted. "Not much anyway. I've been thinking about what I need to tell you, and I couldn't sleep." Lily's eyes moved to the folder in front of Maxwell, and he could see the suspicion in her gaze. "What is all this?" she asked, her voice guarded. Maxwell took a deep breath, centering himself, trying to find the right words. "Lily, I need to ask you something first. Did Eleanor ever mention her family to you? Her past? Where she came from?" Lily shook her head slowly, her eyes still on the folder. "No. Like I said, she didn't really talk about herself. She was more interested in listening to my story, asking me about my life, my dreams, my fears. She'd ask me questions about my past. But whenever I'd try to turn the conversation around and ask about hers, she'd change the subject." "Did she ever seem sad when she talked about the past?" Maxwell pressed. "Like there was something she was carrying, some burden she couldn't quite put down?" Lily considered this carefully. "Yeah," she said slowly, her voice thoughtful. "There was this look she'd get in her eyes sometimes, like she was remembering something painful. It would happen when she thought I wasn't looking, or when we'd be sitting in silence together. Her expression would change, and I could see this sadness, this longing, this, I don't know, regret maybe. But she never wanted to talk about it. Whenever I'd ask if she was okay, she'd just smile and say she was fine." Maxwell nodded and carefully opened the folder. He pulled out one of Eleanor's journal entries, one of the earliest ones, dated 15 years ago, and slid it across the table to Lily. "I need you to read this," he said quietly. "Please." Lily picked up the page, her eyes scanning the words. As she read, Maxwell watched her face transform. Confusion gave way to shock. Shock gave way to something that looked like dawning comprehension mixed with disbelief. The entry read, "I found her. After all these years, I finally found my sister. I hired a private investigator, and he tracked her down. She's living in the city, just 30 miles away from me. All this time, I thought she was somewhere far away, somewhere I could never reach her. But she was close. So close. I'm terrified to contact her. What if she doesn't want to see me? What if she's built a life where I don't fit? What if she's moved on and doesn't care about the sister who was taken away from her? But I have to try. I have to at least try to make things right between us. I owe her that much." When Lily finished reading, she looked up at Maxwell with confusion etched into her features. "I don't understand," she whispered. "What is this? Why are you showing me Eleanor's journal?" "Because it's important," Maxwell said gently. "Because it explains everything. Keep reading." Lily picked up another entry that Maxwell slid across the table. This one was dated 10 years ago. "I tried to contact her today. I went to her house and knocked on the door. She answered, and for a moment, I thought I saw recognition in her eyes. But then her expression hardened, and I could see the anger there. I told her who I was. I told her that I was her sister, that I'd been searching for her for years. I told her that I wanted to make up for lost time, that I wanted to be part of her life. But she told me to leave. She said I'd abandoned her, that I'd let her go into the system without fighting for her. She said I didn't have the right to just show up in her life and expect her to welcome me with open arms. I tried to explain that I was just a child, that I had no choice in what happened. But she wouldn't listen. She told me that if I ever came back, she'd call the police. I left, and I cried in my car for 3 hours. I've lost her twice now. Once when we were separated as children, and now again as adults. Lily's hands were trembling as she read. Maxwell could see the tears forming in her eyes, though she was trying to hold them back. "There's more," Maxwell said, sliding another entry across the table. This one was dated 7 years ago. "I've been watching her from a distance. I know that sounds creepy, and maybe it is. But I can't let her go. I hired someone to keep track of her, to send me updates about her life. I know where she works, where she lives, who her friends are. And I know about her daughter. The girl is beautiful. She has her mother's eyes, her mother's stubborn chin. Looking at her photograph makes my heart ache. This is my niece, my family, and I've never even met her. I'm thinking about contacting the girl instead. Maybe if I can build a relationship with her, it will eventually lead to a reconciliation with her mother. Maybe I can be the aunt that her daughter needs, even if I can't be the sister that her mother wants me to be." Lily's face went completely white as she read this entry. She looked up at Maxwell, her eyes wide with a dawning realization that seemed to be overwhelming her. Maxwell slid another entry across the table, this one dated 6 years ago. "I found her, my niece. She's living on the streets, and it's breaking my heart. This beautiful, intelligent girl is out there alone, with no one to care for her, no one to help her, no one to believe in her. I went to the shelter where she was staying, and I saw her for the first time in person. She was so thin, so fragile, so lost. And all I wanted to do was wrap her up and take her home, and tell her that she was safe, that she was loved, that she mattered. But I couldn't do that. I couldn't just reveal myself to her. So instead, I volunteered at the shelter. I made sure I was there when she was there. I started talking to her, getting to know her, building a relationship with her. Her name is Lily, and she is the most remarkable person I've ever met. She's been through so much, and yet she still has hope. She still has dreams. She still has this light inside her that hasn't been completely extinguished by the darkness of her circumstances. I'm going to help her. I'm going to be there for her. I'm going to make sure that this beautiful girl knows that she is worthy of love, worthy of support, worthy of a future." When Lily finished reading this entry, she set the page down slowly and looked up at Maxwell. "This doesn't make sense," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "What is this? Why are you showing me Eleanor's journal? What does this have to do with me?" Maxwell took a deep breath and reached across the table to take Lily's hand. Her hand was ice cold and trembling. "Eleanor was your aunt, Lily," he said, gently. "She was your mother's sister. She spent her entire life trying to find your mother. And when she couldn't reconnect with her, she found you instead." Lily's face went completely white. She pulled her hand away from Maxwell's as if she'd been burned. "What?" she said, her voice hollow. "No, that can't be." "It's true," Maxwell said. "I know it's shocking. I know it's a lot to take in. But Eleanor was your aunt, and she loved you more than anything in the world." Lily stood up so abruptly that her chair fell backward with a loud clang. Several people in the cafe turned to look at them. A barista started to move toward their table, but Maxwell held up his hand to indicate that everything was okay. "No," Lily said, shaking her head violently. "No, that's not. Eleanor was helping me because she wanted to help me, not because she had to, not because we were related. She chose to help me. She did choose to help you, Maxwell said, his voice calm and steady. That's exactly the point. She chose to help you because she loved you. Not because of obligation, but because of love. Sit down, Maxwell said gently. Please, let me explain. Let me tell you everything. Lily looked like she might bolt, like she might run out of the cafe and never come back. But something in Maxwell's face, the genuine compassion, the shared grief, the quiet determination, made her pause. After a long moment, she bent down and picked up her fallen chair, then sat back down across from Maxwell. Maxwell waited a moment to make sure she wasn't going to run again, and then he began to tell her the story of Eleanor's life. Eleanor was born in foster care, Maxwell began, his voice soft and measured. She had a sister who was taken away from her when they were both very young. Eleanor spent decades searching for that sister. She finally found her about 15 years ago, but her sister didn't want to have anything to do with Eleanor. She was angry about being abandoned, even though Eleanor had no choice in the matter. She was just a child. She couldn't have done anything to prevent the separation. Maxwell paused, letting that sink in, giving Lily time to process what he was saying. Eleanor couldn't let it go, he continued. She couldn't accept losing her sister twice, once as a child and again as an adult. So she started researching, trying to find out about her sister's life. She wanted to understand what had happened to her, where she'd gone, who she'd become. And that's when she found you, Lily said quietly, her voice hollow. Yes, Maxwell confirmed. She found out where you'd ended up in the foster system. She tracked your movements through the system. And then one day, she saw you at the shelter. And she knew. She knew you were her niece. How? Lily asked, her voice small and confused. How did she know? How could she possibly know that I was related to her just by looking at me? Because you look like your mother, Maxwell said. And, your mother looked like Eleanor. Eleanor saw herself in you, and she knew. She knew that you were family. Lily's tears were flowing freely now, streaming down her face in silent rivers of emotion. She didn't try to wipe them away. She just sat there, staring at Maxwell, trying to process the magnitude of what he was telling her. Why didn't she tell me? Lily asked, her voice breaking. Why didn't she just tell me the truth? She wanted to, Maxwell said, pulling out the draft letter that Eleanor had written. She was planning to, but her illness progressed faster than she expected. By the time she realized how serious it was, she was too weak to do anything but fight for her survival. He slid the letter across the table. Lily picked it up with shaking hands and began to read Eleanor's elegant handwriting. My dear Lily, I need to tell you something that will change everything between us. But first, I need you to know that nothing I'm about to tell you changes how I feel about you or what you mean to me. My love for you is not conditional. It is not based on obligation or duty. It is real, and it is deep, and it is unconditional. You are not alone in this world. You have never been as alone as you thought. You have never been as invisible as the world made you feel. You have always mattered. You have always been worthy of love and care and attention. I am your aunt, your mother's sister. I have loved you since the moment I discovered who you were. And I have been searching for a way to tell you the truth without frightening you away. I know this is shocking. I know it might feel like a betrayal that I didn't tell you sooner. I understand if you feel angry or confused or hurt. But I was afraid. Afraid that if you knew I was related to you, You might think my help came from obligation rather than love. Afraid that you might reject me just like your mother did. Afraid of losing you twice, once when we were separated by circumstance and again by choice. But I cannot keep this secret any longer. You deserve to know that you have family. You deserve to know that you have always been loved, even when you didn't know it. You deserve to know that somewhere in this world, there is someone who sees you, who believes in you, who thinks you are extraordinary. Your mother and I were separated when we were children. I spent my whole life trying to find her, trying to make things right between us. When I finally found her, she wanted nothing to do with me. It broke my heart. I felt like I had failed her, like I hadn't fought hard enough to keep us together, like I hadn't been worthy of her love. But then I found you. And suddenly, I had a second chance. A chance to be there for someone I loved. A chance to make a difference in the life of someone who mattered to me. A chance to prove that love doesn't have to be perfect or easy or uncomplicated. Sometimes love is messy and complicated and requires sacrifice and patience and faith. I want you to know that I see you, Lily. I see your strength, your resilience, your beautiful heart. I see someone who has been through more than any person should have to endure. And yet you still wake up every day and keep fighting. You still have hope. You still believe that your life can be better. That takes a kind of courage that most people will never have to find within themselves. I see a brilliant mind in you. I see potential that the world hasn't given you a chance to develop yet. I see someone who deserves so much more than the world has given her. And I want to be part of your life. Not as a volunteer at a shelter, not as some charity worker trying to ease her conscience. I want to be part of your life as your aunt, as your family, as someone who loves you, not because she has to, but because she cannot imagine her life without you in it. When you're ready, I want to introduce you to my husband, Maxwell. I want you to be part of our lives. I want to help you build a future that you deserve. I want to make sure that you never feel alone again. But most of all, I want you to know that you are not alone. You never were. You have always had family. You have always had someone who believed in you. You have always been loved. With all my love and with all my hope for your future, Eleanor. When Lily finished reading the letter, she was sobbing. Not the desperate, wrenching sobs that Maxwell had heard at the cemetery, but something different, something more complex. This was grief mixed with relief, pain mixed with hope, loss mixed with the sudden realization that she had never been as alone as she thought. Maxwell reached across the table and took her hand. This time, she didn't pull away. "I'm so sorry," he said, his own voice thick with emotion. "I'm sorry that Eleanor didn't get to tell you this herself. I'm sorry that you've been alone all this time, not knowing that you had family. I'm sorry that I failed to see what my wife was doing, that I wasn't present enough in her life to know about you. I'm sorry for all of it." Lily looked up at him through her tears, her eyes searching his face, trying to determine if this was real or if she was somehow dreaming. "Why are you telling me this now?" she asked, her voice small and uncertain. "Why does it matter? Eleanor's gone. She can't be my aunt now. It doesn't change anything." "It changes everything," Maxwell said firmly. "And it matters because Eleanor made plans, big plans. She was going to launch a foundation in her name, dedicated to helping homeless youth like you. She was going to give away $500 million to change the lives of kids who'd fallen through the cracks of the system. She was going to do it all in your honor. To prove that people like you matter, that your lives have value, that the world needs you. $500 million? Lily repeated, her voice hollow and disbelieving. Yes, Maxwell said, pulling out the foundation documents. She had it all planned out. Youth centers in 12 major cities. Scholarship programs for kids like you who want to go to school. Job training initiatives, mental health services, housing assistance. Everything was laid out with meticulous precision. Budgets, timelines, staffing requirements, projected outcomes. He spread the documents out on the table, showing Lily the detailed plans that Eleanor had created. Each document was filled with Eleanor's handwriting, her notes, her visions for how to transform the lives of homeless youth. And I'm going to make sure that happens, Maxwell continued. I'm going to finish what Eleanor started. I'm going to launch the Eleanor Harrington Foundation, and I'm going to make sure that every kid who's ever felt as alone as you did knows that someone sees them, someone cares, someone believes in them. Lily's face crumpled as she looked at the documents. I can't. This is too much, she said, her voice breaking. I don't know how to process this. I don't know how to accept that Eleanor was my aunt, that she was planning all of this, that she loved me this much. I know, Maxwell said gently, his voice full of compassion. I know it's overwhelming. I know it's more than you can probably take in right now. But I need you to understand something, Lily. You're not just a charity case to me. You're not just some homeless girl that Eleanor felt sorry for. You're Eleanor's niece. That makes you family. That makes you important. That makes you worthy of love and care and support. He paused, making sure she was listening, making sure she understood the weight of what he was saying. And I want to be part of your life, he continued, if you'll let me. I want to get to know you. I want to hear your stories. I want to help you build the future that Eleanor believed you deserved. Lily looked at him for a long moment, her eyes searching his face, trying to determine if he was genuine or if this was some kind of elaborate deception. Finally, she asked, Do you have any other family besides Eleanor? I have 2 children from my first marriage, Maxwell said, a son and a daughter. They're adults now, with their own families. They're named David and Sarah. David is 35 years old, and he works as an architect. Sarah is 32, and she's a pediatrician. I haven't been very present in their lives, especially since Eleanor died. I was too consumed with my business, too focused on making money, too absorbed in my own world to be a good father to them. He paused, a look of regret crossing his face. But I think that's going to change, he continued. I think they would want to know about you. I think Eleanor would have wanted us all to be a family. A real family, not just people who share blood, but people who genuinely care about each other and support each other and love each other unconditionally. Lily wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. I don't know if I can do this, she said, her voice uncertain. I don't know if I can just accept that I have this whole family I never knew about, and a foundation, and all of these plans. It's too much. It's overwhelming. It doesn't feel real. You don't have to decide anything today, Maxwell said. Take your time. Process this. Cry if you need to. Get angry if you need to. Do whatever you need to do to come to terms with this new reality. But Lily, I want you to know something. Eleanor loved you. Not because she had to, not because you were related to her. She loved you because you are worthy of love. You are worthy of support. You are worthy of a future. And I'm going to make sure that Eleanor's love means something. I'm going to make sure that Eleanor's legacy lives on through helping kids just like you." Lily nodded slowly, tears still streaming down her face, her whole body trembling with the weight of this new knowledge. "Can I ask you something?" she said, her voice small and uncertain. "Anything," Maxwell replied. "Ask me anything you want." "Do you think Eleanor knew?" Lily asked. "Do you think she knew that she was going to die before she could tell me? Do you think that's why she was so determined to help me? Why she was so focused on building the foundation?" Maxwell considered the question carefully, thinking back to the journal entries he'd read, to the letters Eleanor had written, to the plans she'd so meticulously laid out. "I think on some level, yes," he said finally. "I think that's why she was so determined to help you, why she was so focused on building the foundation. I think she knew she was running out of time, and she wanted to make sure that her love for you would continue on, even after she was gone. I think she wanted to make sure that you would never feel alone again, that you would know that you were loved, that you were part of a family." Lily looked down at the letter in her hands, at Eleanor's elegant handwriting expressing all the love and longing that she'd kept hidden for so many years. "I wish she'd told me," Lily whispered, her voice breaking. "I wish I'd had a chance to know her, really know her. Not just as a volunteer, but as my aunt, as my family." "I know," Maxwell said, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand. "I wish that too. But maybe this is our chance to honor her, to make sure that her life meant something, to make sure that her love for you and for all the kids like you changes the world. Maybe this is how Eleanor gets to continue her work, through us, through the foundation, through the lives we touch and the people we help." Lily looked up at Maxwell, and for the first time since he'd told her the truth, he saw something other than shock and confusion in her eyes. He saw hope. He saw the beginning of acceptance. He saw the possibility that this girl might be able to transform this devastating revelation into something meaningful and powerful. "Okay," she said quietly. "Okay. I'll help you. I'll help you launch the foundation. I'll help you honor Eleanor's memory. And maybe I can get to know my family. Maybe I can have the life that Eleanor believed I deserved." Maxwell felt tears streaming down his own face. He reached across the table and pulled Lily into an embrace, holding her as she cried, letting her know that she was no longer alone, that she had family, that she was loved. "You're going to be okay," he whispered into her hair. "Eleanor made sure of that. Eleanor loved you enough to make sure that you would never be alone again." Over the next few weeks, Maxwell and Lily would meet regularly. She would share stories about Eleanor, memories of their time together at the shelter. Maxwell would share his own memories of Eleanor, painting a picture of a woman who was far more complex and compassionate than either of them had fully understood while she was alive. And together, they would begin the work of launching the Eleanor Harrington Foundation, a legacy built on love, sacrifice, and the belief that every life matters. But what neither of them knew was that Eleanor's secrets didn't end with Lily. There were other revelations waiting to be discovered, other pieces of Eleanor's hidden life that would emerge as they dug deeper into her past. And these discoveries would force Maxwell to confront not just who Eleanor had been, but who he had become in the process of losing her. In the weeks following the revelation about Eleanor, Maxwell and Lily spent countless hours together, developing the framework for the Eleanor Harrington Foundation. They met daily at their cafe, where Maxwell introduced Lily to his network of professionals eager to support the cause. However, it was the emotional work of understanding Eleanor's life that truly bonded them. One afternoon, Lily appeared preoccupied, stirring her coffee absent-mindedly. "I keep thinking about Eleanor," she admitted, her eyes glistening with tears. "I feel like there's so much more to her story that I don't know." "Maybe we can find those pieces together," Maxwell suggested. "We should dig deeper into her past." Lily's expression shifted to determination. "Yes, I want to know everything about her." That evening, they sifted through Eleanor's belongings at Maxwell's home, uncovering photographs, letters, and mementos. Lily found a small jewelry box containing beautiful pieces that Eleanor had likely received as gifts. "I want to wear this," she said, putting on a delicate necklace. As they continued, they discovered unsent letters that Eleanor had written to her estranged sister, filled with longing and regret. "Why didn't she send these?" Lily asked, heartbroken. "Fear," Maxwell replied. "She was afraid of rejection." Finally, they found an envelope from a lawyer, Jonathan Caldwell, which mentioned unresolved family matters regarding Eleanor's estate. Eleanor had a daughter, Jonathan informed them in the meeting that followed. "Her name is Sarah Harrington." "What does this mean for us?" Lily asked, stunned. "It means we have more family to uncover," Maxwell said. "We need to reach out to her." After discussing how to approach Sarah, they decided to send a heartfelt letter explaining their connection to Eleanor and inviting her to reconnect. As they sealed the envelope, anticipation hung in the air. Weeks passed without a response, but Maxwell and Lily continued working on the foundation, knowing they had taken an important step. They both wondered about Sarah and hoped she would eventually reach out. As they moved forward, the past remained intertwined with their present, and they knew that more secrets lay waiting to be uncovered.